What's channel? I'm for Classic and welcome to BenchART. So long time no see. I'm very sorry for this. I haven't covered the latest games that have been coming out, but I promise you these will change. Um, but let's focus on what we are here today. So we are here today for killing for free. So thank you much for Tripwire to provide me a key for the game. I've been playing a little bit of the game, and there are some performance issues with this. And as far as I've seen, I'm seeing the Tripwire reports where they claim that they want to optimize the game, and it's mostly a CPU-bound game, which I can confirm. My Ryzen 5 3600X is having a kind of a hard time to keep up, while the RX 6700 XT, which I'm actually focusing the benchmark in here, it's actually holding on pretty well. Well, but that depends on your perspective. So I'm starting in here with 1080p using median settings, which is one of the recommended settings that I do recommend for this game. It is also the setting that the game recommends, and it does recommend to use FSR on its balanced mode, which I do disagree. FSR does a mess in this game, and especially in balanced mode. So instead of using FSR on its balanced mode, I switched over to TSR with 67%. So it's pretty much the same resolution as FSR on its quality mode, but instead of being FSR, it's actually TSR, which is, I do find it superior, especially in Unreal Engine games, since TSR is especially tailored up to be working with the issues that Unreal Engine also have. So with these settings, I can assure you that you will be able to get 60 frames per second when it depends from your GPU, but unfortunately, since this is a very CPU bound game, you are going to be seeing stutters and performance issues on the CPU side. So because of that, I decided to raise a little bit the settings. So instead of going with the median settings, I decided to go with the high settings. And just by doing this switch, I must say that performance, it is pretty similar, alright, in between the median settings to the high settings, because I'm pretty much CPU bound in here. But still, I can start to notice that in more demanding moments like hordes or moments where there are a lot of fire and a lot of alpha effects, I can clearly notice that the GPU can't keep up with the 60 frames per second. But I mean, so as the CPU though. In many occasions, the CPU can't also hold 60 frames per second. Doesn't matter if you are playing on medium or high settings. Your CPU, if it is similar as mine, you will have performance issues and you will have stutters and frame rates under 60 anyway. The difference is, with the high settings, there are more moments where you will get below the 60 frames per second threshold, unfortunately. Because in some occasions the GPU will be the reason to have those drops below 60. It's not just the CPU anymore, it will be also the GPU. So let's go a little bit more forward in here and jump up to the high settings, I mean the same settings, but instead of using upscaling like the TSR at 67%, I decided to go with full native TSR, which is TSR at 100%. And 1080p and high setting. Okay, so here we are, high settings, 1080p, and let's go a little bit lower, TSR at native 100%. And well, this time around our limitation, it is mostly the GPU, so I'm not going to get 60 frames per second anymore. With these settings, it will be kind of a mixed bag in between 30 to 60. It stays mostly at between 40 to 50 frames per second. You will still get CPU stutters or CPU related stuff that happens with this game. So you will get stutters none of the less, and probably you will get also very high CPU usage none of the less. But the main culprit for the lower frame rates in this with these settings, it will be the GPU this time around. So playing with native resolution on high settings at 1080p proves to be kind of a challenge for the RX 6700 XT in here. So yeah, that's it. I think I'm just going to skip ahead, and I want to show you how maximum settings perform, which is essentially this. Okay, so the settings as usual: 1080p, ultra settings, TSR at 100%, and frame rate it is now and again above than 30, but this time around instead of staying in between 40 to 50, well, it stays in some points, but you'll see drops below than that. So expect to see a frame rate above than 30. Okay, so as you can see, there was a drop in there to 37, 34. There might be moments where it does drop below than 30 frames per second because of the GPU. So it's really up to you if you want to play like this. Since this is a cooperative multiplayer game, I think we are better off with as much frame rate as possible. And for me, my favorite settings for playing at 1080p, it will definitely be either to play at medium or high, but using upscaling. So essentially using TSR at 67%. You can customize any value that you want. I'm just using 67% because it's a reference for the quality mode of stuff like DLSS or FSR. Alright, so it makes sense. It is also corresponding to 720p upscale to 1080p, which seems very low figures, but I've seen some benchmarks around the Xbox Series X, and also that console it does struggle to keep up to 60 frames per second, and also it does play with resolutions lower than 1080p, sometimes 720p, sometimes 900p. So yeah, the core experience should be quite the same as the consoles, alright, unfortunately in that sense. So I think it's time to move on to 1440p. You know my recommendations for 1080p, so I think it's time, yeah, to move on to 1440p, yeah. And, well, unfortunately for some reason, the settings menu still displays that this is 1080p, but it's not true. I'm playing at 1440p in here, using median settings, but this time around I'm upscaling with TSR at 57%. Okay, this is essentially at the same time it's I believe it's 720p. I can make the calculus in here. So yeah, no, it's actually 820p. It's actually superior to 720p in here. And as you can see, performance it is pretty good. It's above than 60 when, of course, when the CPU allows. But if I had to play at 1440p, I think median settings with TSR at 57%, it would be probably the setting that I would go for if I would want to enjoy as much frame rate as possible. All right, so I think I will just skip ahead. So next settings to be tested, it will be again 1440p, this time around with the eye settings and 67% of resolution scaling. So in case you are wondering what resolution this match, it is pretty much 964p. It's something in between 900p and 1080p. Okay, upscaling using TSR. Unfortunately, the performance is not great. So we start to be GPU bound in here, and it's again a mixed bag in between 30 to 60, with most of the time being above than 40. So this is a boss fight, which have a lot of alpha effects and stuff going on, and a lot of frame time spikes. Unfortunately, CPU is taking a very big hammering in here. So yeah, this game is very CPU bound at the moment. I know that they are trying to investigate and find ways to optimize it, and let's hope they do it. But yeah, a much better CPU will definitely make a huge difference regarding the performance of this game, because what I feel is that CPU matters more, I mean, than the GPU in this case of this game. So let's move on to my final tests, which will be 4K. So until now you have been seeing Unreal Engine 5 being at its splendor. I mean using median settings, which includes stuff like lumen on the global illumination side and also lumen reflections. But this time around I decided to start 4K with the low settings, which disables lumen for both global illumination and also reflections, and the game starts to feel really different in that sense. So it's no longer that dark, the light doesn't have the same impact as with the lumen GI or lumen reflection, so everything feels very different. It's still very playable, but the environment is entirely different. So if you want to take this game like in a serious competitive way, if that is possible, probably playing without lumen global illumination and lumen reflections makes it much more easier to play, since everything is so visible. It's not as dark as with the lumen, it's not as atmospheric, okay, but it's definitely much more playable like this. And I'm not talking about frame rate or stuff like that, because as you know, we are CPU bound, so frame rate is not going anywhere in here. I'm getting above than 60, but just like any other setting that I tried before, when the action starts to pack, the CPU starts to bottleneck and the frame rate starts to drop below than 60. So there is no way of saving this unless they optimize it with updates or just a newer CPU. But still, yeah, 4K it is possible with 50% TSR, which is essentially upscaling from 1080p to 4K. And yeah, it does look very different though. It seems like a generation difference from the previous settings that we did try, for the words of course, but it's definitely way more playable like this, since we are able just to see everything. There is no more contrast or dark environments like this. Okay, so it's up to you to choose. You can use low settings or you can disable lumen or anything like that in any setting that you want to play. Okay, but it was just a curiosity, given that 4K can be very demanding. So let's move on to median settings. Okay, and with median settings I decided to keep up the resolution scaling at 50%, but this time around with the median settings we are using lumen. Okay, we are using again our lumen GI system and our lumen reflections, and as you can see, it looks very different. It makes everything so much atmospheric, so much dark and so much more contrasted-ish. Okay, but unfortunately, and as expected, performance it is in between 40 to 60 frames per second, in some occasions 30. Okay, so yeah, it's not really the setting that I would recommend to play. Again, I would try to get as much as possible above than 60, but at 4K with 50% ESR and median settings it's not really possible. I would probably play, if I need to play with 4K, I would probably go with the 50% resolution scaling and play with the low settings. Okay, just to get as maximum frame rate as possible, because median settings it's just in between. Alright, it's not very good in that sense. And now, just for fun, let's just move on and put the 4K eye settings. Okay, so let me just show you. It's 4K high settings and 57% of resolution scaling, which is something in between 1080p and 1440p. So I just want to show you, it plays above than 30, but it will drop eventually below than 30 frames per second. So this is what you can expect for now regarding killing for free. Okay, I've done a live stream where I show you more of the gameplay in case you want to check it out. And I talk a little bit more about the game itself and my expectations and my opinion about it. This was just my benchmark video as usual, where I talk about the performance that I do get on my system. And I do hope that I did help you out with this. And in case you have any question, regarding killing for free and its performance on a different machine, go ahead and ask. I will gladly reply of what you can expect regarding the performance of this game. So guys, I think that's all that I want to talk about killing for free. Again, thanks again for Tripwire for providing me the key for the game, and again for all my fellow viewers that had been waiting for a new video from me from the past like 1 month and a half. So I'm terribly sorry for that, but I'm back now, okay, and I do hope that my motivation will be good. And that's it. Okay, guys, thank you a lot for watching, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.